I think it bears repeating. By now, you all know that China is the world's biggest factory. However, for several years now, China has not been content to be a factory producing cheap products with cheap labor. Not at all. These days, few can deny that the Pearl River Delta, the region in which cities such as Hong Kong, Macau, Guangzhou, and Shenzhen are located, is one of the most dynamic, prosperous, and innovative regions in the world. We have told you about it numerous times, both on this channel and on our sister channel, Visualeconomik. From a Chinese Silicon Valley to connecting the country's most populated regions with the latest models of high-speed trains, China is modernizing at a breakneck pace. And yes, Beijing certainly has many challenges ahead. China is no longer growing as fast as it was previously. Its demographics are anything but rosy, and there is little doubt that Xi Jinping is more inclined than his predecessors to put ideology before economics. Nevertheless, Visualeconomik viewers, none of this detracts from the fact that the country will continue to grow in the long term, and it will be able to continue growing thanks to the fact that China is home to some crucial sectors. So the questions are clear. What are the powerful sectors that could boost the Chinese economy? How has the Asian giant managed to overtake the West in several technological branches? What do they have in common? And what lessons can we learn from this whole story? Today on Visualeconomik, we tell you all about it. So stay tuned. As we said a moment ago, China is showing signs that a good part of its industry is on the verge of surpassing that of the West. Well, there's no other way to say it. In many cases, they have already surpassed the West. Yet this has not always been the case. For many years, China has suffered countless failures in boosting its industry. It has invested millions and millions of yuan in R&D, tried to catch up with productive European and North American factories, and yet many of these efforts have ended up being scrapped. China simply could not beat Western industries. Now then, do you want some concrete examples of major Chinese failures? A clear example is the combustion vehicle sector. For decades, the Asian giant bet on this sector, but the results ended up being miserable. China exports only 3.9% of combustion engines globally, far below the US with 16.7%, or Germany with 13.9%, but also below countries like Italy, France, and Poland. And keep in mind that the Chinese population is much larger. But here is another example. For the past 30 years, and as a result of the worldwide technological mega boom, China has been determined to build a strong semiconductor and microchip industry. You know how important this sector is for geopolitics.
14 December 2022, China readying $143 billion package for its chip firms in face of US curbs.
The point is that after all those years of the chip sector being a real national priority, China has not been able to achieve much. In fact, it currently has to import more than $300 billion worth of microchips every year. Its share of international manufacturing is barely 15% and has only grown by 5% since 2006. Therefore, if we want to understand how China could make its industries take off and surpass the West in some of them, we first have to understand what has led it to fail so far in these important sectors. The first reason for the Chinese failure in sectors such as combustion vehicles was simply a lack of experience. Western companies such as Ford, BMW, and Volkswagen have practically a century of experience manufacturing the vehicles we are all familiar with. The United States and Europe have enormous implicit knowledge, experience, networks of contacts. We are talking about the kind of information that is not usually reflected in reports and big macroeconomic figures, but which is essential for a company to function to the best of its capabilities. And of course, no matter how much money China has invested, surpassing the know-how of the automotive giants is a tall order. However, the truth is that other countries have managed to overcome this problem. For example, South Korea has a very strong automobile industry. We're all familiar with the cars from Hyundai or Kia. These are two brands that have managed to establish themselves strongly in the international market. So why hasn't China achieved the same success as South Korea? Well, among other reasons, here we could point out a second problem of the Chinese industrial system, and that is that they have a lot of problems with complexity. You see, if we were to understand with a very simple example how the Chinese industry works, we could do it by talking about calculators and mathematicians. You see, calculators are used to do simple math, but they are capable of doing it very, very quickly. A mathematician, on the other hand, is slower when it comes to making simple calculations, but thanks to his or her intelligence, can develop complex problems and be much more innovative. Well, China would be the calculator. China is very good at scaling technologies, producing quickly and at full speed, speed. Yet, when it comes to innovating and breaking with the market, we're talking about something else. We can best appreciate this phenomenon in semiconductors. This industry requires both theoretical and applied physicists, mathematicians, chemists, industrial and computer engineers, and many innovative processes that require constant adaptation. And as we have said, China has traditionally had a lot of problems with these tasks, which in turn would explain why it has not been able to adapt in the combustion car market. But remember, by no means are we saying that Chinese companies do not innovate in any way. The optimization of industrial processes and innovations in machinery that they have achieved are highly valuable. What we are saying is that China has not taken it upon itself to push the technological frontier. They are two different types of advances. Neither is better or worse. They are simply different. The question is, why is this happening? Why isn't China pushing the technological frontier? Here we can point to the lack of developed capital markets, the youth of its companies, and the fact that, historically, China has not needed to be disruptive. After all, the Asian giant has had decent enough results investing in simple and scalable sectors, or copying foreign technologies. Innovation has not been a necessity. But what if all this were about to change? What if China could turn its traditional disadvantage into a fresh opportunity? Well, pay attention. But before we continue, it's crucial to address a growing concern: the unauthorized sale of personal information online. This trend is escalating, with an increasing number of personal records being exposed. The 2022 Identity Theft Resource Center's annual data breach report reveals a staggering 41.5% rise in affected individuals compared to the previous year. This situation warrants attention, as the misuse of customer data by scammers can lead to financial theft or identity impersonation. However, it's not a cause for immediate alarm. You possess the power to safeguard your privacy by requesting data brokers to erase your information. The issue lies in the time-consuming nature of this task if done individually. Fortunately, there's a practical solution at hand. Our sponsor, Economies, offers an efficient 3-step method to address this problem. Create an account and tell Economies whose personal data they'll be removing. Grant Economies the right to work for you. They'll contact the data brokers and request the deletion of your personal data. Sit back and relax. Economies will handle any objections and keep you updated on their progress every step of the way. And the best part, the first 100 people to use the code ECONOMICEN at the link below will receive a 60% discount on Economies. Don't miss this chance to protect your privacy.
The Chinese domain.
If there is one sector in which China has taken the lead over the West, it is, without a doubt, and ironic as it may seem, renewables and clean energy. This is something that can be seen with the boom in Chinese auto exports, which have soared since 2020, already surpassing Japan as the world's largest auto exporter. But wait a minute, didn't we just say that the automotive industry has never prospered in China? Well, no, it hasn't. But remember the nuance that we mentioned before. A clear example is the combustion vehicle sector. For decades, the Asian giant bet on this sector, but the results ended up being miserable. Exactly. What did not prosper in China were the traditional combustion engine vehicles. But if China has stood out for anything, it is precisely for its mastery of the electric car. And we are not only talking about exports. China has also been one of the countries around the world with the highest adoption rate in its local market. To give you an idea, while in 2019 these vehicles represented around 5% of the total, today that figure is more than 25%. They are behind only Norway and Germany. And the truth is that this makes all the sense in the world. Although it may seem otherwise, electric motors are simpler than combustion engines. What's more, China has not been responsible for developing the scientific theory behind these vehicles, or their most important component, the batteries. Quite the opposite. China's role has been to take a technology that already existed and scale it as much as possible. To this end, the government has spared no expense, showering both local industry and consumers with money. On top of that, it must be said, one of the advantages of China and its authoritarian government is that it can move huge amounts of resources very quickly and without having to ask anyone's permission. An example of this is the control of the global supply chain for the production of electric batteries. China controls more than 60% of the vast majority of the components needed to manufacture batteries. Components among which mining resources feature heavily. Well, the point is that with this type of technology, China has managed to avoid two of its major disadvantages. Renewables and batteries are sufficiently new sectors that they are not dominated by Western companies with decades of experience behind them. But at the same time, they also originate from technologies that are reasonably well established in the West and do not require such breakthrough innovation from Chinese researchers. So China can focus on doing what it does best, being that calculator that produces enormous quantities and at full throttle. However, the electric car sector is not the only one to enjoy all these advantages. In the solar panel sector, for example, we can observe the same phenomenon that we have mentioned with electric vehicles. Until 2007-2008, China let other countries research and try to make solar technology profitable. And once they did, boom, they went into production like crazy. They didn't have to invent anything. They just got down to work and took advantage of their huge economy of scale and the learning curves they'd already experienced. And what do we mean by the latter? If there is one thing that makes new technology stand out, it is that they tend to have very steep learning curves. This means that their price plummets as companies learn to become more efficient as they manufacture products. In other words, the more solar panels produced, the cheaper it will be to manufacture new ones. To give a couple of examples, both solar panels and lithium batteries cost as little as 15% of their 2010 price in 2019. And of course, this is where China's big advantage comes into play. Its sheer size. Lots of Chinese citizens means lots of demand for solar panels, windmills, and batteries. In fact, last year alone, China added enough solar panels and windmills to meet the energy demand of all of Australia. Crazy. This allows companies to start manufacturing like there is no tomorrow, without the fear of being left with unsold goods. And as we've just told you, the more they manufacture, the cheaper they manage to manufacture, creating a vicious circle that has put China at the top of the world's renewable energies.
China now accounts for 97% of global solar wafer and component manufacturing capacity, a rise from its already high share of 80% in 2010. Thanks to economies of scale as well as supply chain integration, innovation, and government support, Chinese companies were able to become cost competitive in wafer production relatively quickly, preventing other market participants from attaining significant market shares. Special report on the global supply chain for solar panels, International Energy Agency.
As this same report notes, another great advantage of the Asian giant lies in its supply chains. More specifically, Chinese companies do not need to leave their borders to find suppliers. And why is this point important, you may ask? Well, basically because it protects them against possible trade wars, such as the one unleashed by Donald Trump, and which Biden has taken it upon himself to deepen. But at the same time, having suppliers in-house reduces the costs of raw materials and components by reducing the distances needed to transport them. In short, China is monopolizing key sectors that are basically new, where there has not been a presence of large foreign companies with decades of experience. It is doing so thanks to its enormous capacity to manufacture large quantities very cheaply and very quickly. But visual economic community, this is far from being the end of the story. So far, we have told you about relatively new sectors, ones where China has focused on scaling up rather than innovating. However, for Xi Jinping, this is not enough. Yes, China has gone from being the world's factory for plastic trinkets to that of much more sophisticated products, but the Chinese government has made it clear that its goal is to move to the next level.
A giant of industry and science.
If I asked you which country is leading basic research in futuristic materials, data analysis, or quantum cryptography, what would you answer? Many of you are probably thinking of the United States, or maybe of countries such as Japan or Israel. Not at all. As you may have gathered from the context of this video, the country we're talking about is China itself. Yes, that's right. In 2021, China surpassed the US for the first time in the high impact index of the prestigious journal Nature, and its growth has been steady since at least 2015. This is how Xi Jinping referred to the progress his country is making.
We have grown stronger in basic research and original innovation, made breakthroughs in some core technologies and key fields, and boosted emerging strategic industries. We have witnessed major successes on multiple fronts, including manned spaceflight, lunar and Martian exploration, deep-sea and deep-earth probes, supercomputers, satellite navigation, quantum information, nuclear power technology, airliner manufacturing, and biomedicine. China has joined the ranks of the world's innovators. Xi Jinping, National Congress 2022.
Now, to what extent is this true, or just bluster? Well, as we were telling you before, China has very good reasons to boast. According to a report by the Strategic Policy Institute of Australia, China leads research in 37 of the 44 key areas they study. What's more, in some fields, such as jet engine engineering, nanomaterial science, or telecommunications, such as the much talked about 5G, this report rates China as the high probability of monopoly. Now, wait a minute, does this mean that China is leading in these sectors and the West can't do anything about it? Not at all. Chinese scientists are currently riding the crest of the wave. However, it does not appear that much of this research is being converted into tangible results. But let's look at one example. According to the aforementioned report, China leads research in 7 out of 10 areas related to artificial intelligence, computing, and communications, including some such as machine learning or the algebra behind artificial intelligence. And yet, well, you better take a look for yourselves. The US leads private investment in this sector by far, and public investment does not change the relative positions. In fact, China does not invest much more than the European Union, a continent that has not been particularly noted for its contributions to artificial intelligence. And take note, because here we are talking about absolute figures, without dividing by population. But don't think that this is an exceptional example. Remember when China had a virtual monopoly on jet engine research? For the time being, the progress it has made in manufacturing is rather limited, and the causes pointed out in the report itself will surely ring a bell.
The skill set required for cutting-edge engine research differs from the expertise, tacit knowledge, and human capital needed to manufacture jet engines to extreme reliability requirements. As one external reviewer put it, if you are good at origami but don't yet excel at making decent paper, are you really good at origami? ASPI's critical technology tracker, who's leading the technology race.
And to all this, we have to add how underdeveloped China's financial sector is, for reasons that would make an entire video, especially after Hong Kong's fall from grace as of 2019. After all, despite the bad reputation they often have, banks, brokers, and dealers are an essential part of the process of turning innovative ideas into tangible products ready for sale. Be that as it may, and having seen all of this, now it's your turn. What other sectors do you know of in which China is ahead of the West? Is there any other reason for China's success in the manufacture of electric cars or solar panels? Will we see all this scientific knowledge materialize into concrete products? You can leave me your answers in the comments. And as always, don't forget that here on Visualeconomik, we release new videos every single week. So subscribe to this channel, hit the little bell so you don't miss any of our updates, and if you like this video, like it, and see you in the next one. All the best. See you next time.